Welcome to Old Classic Car, and in this compilation we are looking at the Ford Consul, the Zephyr and the Zodiac. So, to begin with, what a cracking pair of classic Fords we've got here down at Bicester. And in the foreground is NJT647. This is a 1959 Ford Zodiac Mk2, complete with Raymond Mays engine conversion. Reworked cylinder head, triple carburetors and so on. So yeah, a bit of a Q car if you remember what those are. Okay, now here we go back in time a little bit to WYA669, a lovely Ford Zephyr 6. What a cracker. This is a Mk1 car, first registered in December of 1956 and showing off also some engine modification under its bonnet. But what a lovely shade of green that is, not dissimilar to our V8 Pilot. Okay, now we are down at the NEC Classic Car Show. We've got XXL526, a Ford Consul Mk2. This one first registered in October of 1959, and this has got the standard 1703cc 4-cylinder engine under its bonnet, currently showing as off the road and sold. Now 602 PTO, this is a Mk3 Zephyr 6. That's a Nottingham registered car dating to the middle of 1962. This was at a particularly sunny Tatton Park, I think this particular car was photographed, but I love the concave grille on those cars. A little bit later and we are at Malvern in 2023, and this is quite a rare old girl, a Mk4 Zephyr 4 with the just under 2 litre engine, the Cortinas V4 engine. Yeah, that's quite an unusual car. Occasionally you see the Zodiacs, and we'll see examples of those later on in this collection, but you don't see many of these Zephyr 4s, so I was very keen to include 2 photos of this car that we spotted in 2023. What a rare survivor that is. The paintwork looks really original on it too. Yeah, it's a real treat to see this one. Okay, carrying on this look at classic Consuls, Zephyrs and Zodiacs, we have another Mk2 Zodiac here, YXY270, head-on view of a beautifully preserved Zodiac. In fact, this was at one of the Cholmondeley Castle classic car shows several years ago. The lovely looking car, 6-cylinder power, very smooth, lovely car indeed. And also at Cholmondeley, possibly at a different date, on a different year, we have 42 MFM. It's a Ford Consul Mk2 from mid-1959, and again this has the standard 1703 engine under that bonnet. Very American inspired styling, shades of Ford Thunderbird in fact. Now we are back to Mk3s now. Mk3 Ford Zephyr 6 EAS 510. That's a beautiful mid-blue example seen at the NEC, and this was in the Ford Hall. There is a separate hall which is mainly packed with classic Fords, and you can see a Model A just to the right hand side there. Now this is a bit of a rarity, one of the open top versions of the Mk2 Ford Zodiac. Very handsome car. These didn't survive all that well, so it's quite a rarity to spot one of these at a classic car show nowadays, but this looks to be a beautiful example. Now we're down, I think this at the NEC again, I think in the classic car auction area, TTN 314, a Ford Consul Mk1 from February 1954. This had the 1508 cc 4-cylinder engine. I wonder what this one sold for and where it is now. Is it on the road? I would hope so. Now here's another rare one spotted again at the NEC, which is a huge classic car show, and it takes some getting around. This is a Ute, the coupe utility, the Australian bodied pickup version of the Ford Zephyr. That's a really interesting car, locally bodied in Australia. I think this was their facility in Geelong, I think it was, that was done. Okay, back on home turf now, LGC 496D, a 1966 Ford Zephyr 6 with a Zodiac for company just over the back there. If you remember any of these cars, if you've ever owned any of these cars, please pop a note in the comments. It's always great to read your thoughts about the cars that feature in these classic car compilations. Now we are over at Avro Heritage at one of the classic car meets over there. We've got 262 UPC, a 1961 Ford Consul Mk2. Many extras on this one. You've got a little lamp there on the windscreen pillar, sun visor, radio aerial, rear view wing mirrors, and so it goes on. Now down to Malvern, and another example of the Ford Zephyr Zodiac Mk2. Particularly nice looking car here, being pursued by a Morris Minor Saloon, a split screen Morris Minor. Now we're going back in time again to the Mk1 and a lovely Mk1 console. This reminds me so much of our next door neighbour's car back in the 1970s. He'd regularly repaint it in white household domestic paint every couple of years. He'd get his brush out and give it another lick of paint, and he used to fly up and down the road in a car just like this one. This is Tatton Park in the mid-2000s, so we're going back a little bit for this one. The car, 2422YG, is a Zodiac. It's currently shown as being sawn, i.e. off the road at the moment. This car was first put on the road in September of 1961. I think it last changed hands in 2022, so hopefully we'll see it again somewhere. Okay, WN166K, a Zodiac Mk4. What date is this one? This was on the K plate, so it'd be late 71 or early 1972. But this is sort of the more upmarket version of the Zephyr 4 that we saw a few moments ago down at Malvern. We are back to Cholmondeley Castle and 496UYT. This car still shows as being taxed, this particular Zephyr, which is really good news. It dates to the beginning of 1958 and it's got the standard 2.6 litre 6-cylinder engine under that bonnet. And again, very American inspired styling there. What a great cruiser that would be. Now we've got NEV 482C. We'll see another photo of this particular car a little bit later. This is a Zephyr 4, the Mk3 version of the Ford Zephyr 4. You can see the slightly narrower grille compared to the Zephyr 6. On the 6, the grille wraps around the front headlights, but on the 4, it's a narrower job altogether. We're back to Mark IIs here for a moment. 728 GDE is the next one, a beautiful two-tone car showing off its 4-cylinder engine. There's a Rover P4 alongside it. Now we've got three here. We've got two classic Zodiacs in bright red. At the far end is Zephyr 6, all Mk3 versions of the Zephyrs and the Zodiacs. So what a great lineup of cars that is. Again, I think this was at one of the Cholmondeley Castle classic car shows just a few years ago. KNT 634 is the next one. We've got a Zephyr Zodiac. So at the top of the tree, the Zephyr was the 6-cylinder car, and the Zodiac was the slightly more upmarket version of that. This is a Mk1 from 1954. Got some really large Lucas lamps on the front there, and a period sun visor, as so many of these cars seem to have. This is from 1964 now, BTU 912B, and that is another example of the Zephyr 4, and that's got the narrower grille that I was talking about before. The 6-cylinder grille wraps around the headlights, and there's just a slightly more upmarket car compared to this. This was very much the entry-level car. Another lovely Zephyr here. This is one of the earlier Mark II Zephyrs with the egg crate type grille, 254 CFM. This one is showing as taxed and on the road, and it dates to 1956. That's a Chester registration, and this was at Cholmondeley Castle, so not too far away from its home. Here we go, we've got a Mark II Zephyr here, 820 AOG. That one was first put on the road in November of 1959, and I love that GB plate on the back there, one of the RAC branded GB plates. Of course now it's UK if you're going to go abroad, but back then, until very recently, you put a GB on the back. LJD 123D is a 1966 Ford Zodiac Mark III. Very smart example in blue as well. And there's a very similar car parked alongside it, which appears to be on wire wheels, chrome wire wheels. I must check sometime to see if I've got a better photograph of that one. This was on a classic rally, the Rally of the Tests. This was in about 2005 or 2006. We've got a 61 registered Zodiac here, and in the background the cockpit of a F4 Phantom, no less. Very interesting. To slightly more recent times, and we've got a really smart Mark II Ford Consul here. These were introduced in 1956 and built all the way through until 1962. The roofline did change partway through production, but yeah, not much otherwise. And this is a very smart, all over the same colour. Sometimes you see these in two-tone. And here just an overall view of quite a variety of Zodiacs and Zephyrs, the Mark III Zodiacs and Zephyrs, a bit of everything there. This was at one of the Tatton Park classic car shows on a particularly sunny day. I think this was in 2023. We are back down at Malvern quite a few years ago now, and a somewhat modified Zephyr here. I wonder what the story is with this. It's got side pipes and very different wheels on it. So if you know what the backstory is of this particular car, it appears to have had the rear door handles removed as well. So have the doors been welded up, or have they just got interior handles only now? I wonder. Okay, YLX687 is the next one. Another example of this 6-cylinder Zodiac Mk2 in a particularly fetching two-tone paint job. And I remember a teacher at school back in the 1980s, he had a car very, very similar to this one. He used to come in it occasionally on nice weather days. And this is Malvern again, NLU290, that's a Mk1 Zephyr. You can just see the Zephyr 6 badging on the boot lid there. This one's showing up as on Saloon now, so off the road, hopefully for not too long. It's a 1953 car with the 2.6 litre engine, I believe. Okay, we've got a Zephyr here, a Zephyr convertible no less, 180 CYP. Thanks to Tony for this photo. I think this was at the Classic Car Show in Paynton. That's a London registered car dating to 1961. These cars, the later Zephyrs and Mk2s, had a slightly larger engine than the Mk1 Zephyr that we saw before, I think. Back to Tatton Park, quite a few years ago, WCF 418 is the car, and Mk3 Ford Zodiac, complete with one of those Webasto full-length folding sunroofs, no less. So that would make it a very airy cabin, allied to all that window that you can see there. Great view out of that particular car. Quite a few classics in the background as well. Back to Cholmondeley, and a Mk1 Ford Zephyr Zodiac 854 GML. That car still shows as being taxed, which is great news. 2.2 litre engine. Like I say, these are slightly smaller 6-cylinder engine compared to the Mk2 that came later. This one dates to 1956. A couple of photos from Peter now. He photographed this lovely estate. This is a rarity, 693 CXC. This one still shows as being on the road as well. That conversion into an estate car was performed by Abbots of Farnham on behalf of Ford. So that is a properly rare car now, and it's still around, which is great, great news. And dating to 1966, we have a Ford Zodiac Mk3 here in a particularly fetching shade of metallic blue, and there's a Mk2 in two-tone grey parked alongside, and quite a collection of other Fords in the background there as well. Got an RS2000, a Capri, and a van. Nice sunny day here. Where are we here? Possibly Cholmondeley, or is it Capesthorne? I'm not quite sure. 412 BCM is the registration, and it's a lovely 6-cylinder Zephyr there showing off its engine. Your Nick Sunshine BEP201C is definitely a car you wouldn't want to see in your rearview mirror. Shades of Z cars here, the old TV series with this Zephyr 4, complete with police sign on the roof, no less. So, yeah, definitely one you wouldn't want to see chasing you down the M1. And we're back to Tatton Park and the Owners Club stand, and again a real variety of Mk3 Zephyrs and Zodiacs on display here. The second car from the camera looks like it's got Wolf Race alloy wheels on it as well, for a bit of added pizzazz. Continuing this look at old Consul Zephyrs and Zodiacs, we've got this beautiful Mk1 example of the Ford Zephyr 6 Estate. What a cracking looking car that is. That is a proper Bobby Dazzler, that one. We'll see another example of that car, or that type of car rather, later on in this particular collection, but that is just wonderful. And how clean does this Mk2 Consul look? What a fantastic looking car. That is KPV 782. That is just a wonderful looking car. And this one dates to 1916. Again, it's got the sun visor. Did many Consuls and Zephyrs here in the UK have visors back in the day? Because most cars seem to have them now. Look at this one here. We've got another example here of the Mk2, and this again also has the sun visor. I can understand many of the cars, maybe in Australia, having sun visors due to the hot sunny weather that tends to occur over there, but here in the UK, did many cars have sun visors fitted back in the day? Maybe you remember, let me know in the comments. We've got a rear three-quarter view, I think possibly of the same car, but really, really handsome looking cars. Like I say, the Mk2s were built from 56 through to 62. Carrying on this look at classic Fords, we have another open top version of the Mk2 Ford Zephyr. 308 DKA is the registration, and this car dates to 1959. There's a few modifications. I can see some wide steel wheels there, so I wonder what the story is. Are there any mods under the bonnet? Maybe this one has also got the Raymond Mays engine conversion. Now we are in 2024, January 24, at the Crew Heritage Centre, and this fantastic oily rag Zephyr 6 turned up, sort of mid-restoration. It had been parked up for many years with an elderly gentleman, changed hands and put back on the road not long before this particular photo was taken. Now we're back to a slightly damp Tatton Park quite a few years ago, a pair of Mark IIs here. Got a Mark II Zephyr in the foreground, and FF378, a really nice car. And it's got those sort of portholes stuck on the front wing, the three circular portholes, a bit like those fitted to Buicks back in the day. Oh, we're back to Mark IVs here, and this mighty machine I think was at Malvern. I think I've got that one right. This is a Ford Zephyr, or the Executive, the Mark IV estate. Fantastically spacious car, and I think probably a bit more balanced looking than the Saloons. The Saloons always look a bit funny, I think, with a really long bonnet and the short boot lid, but I think the estate version here is a lot more balanced and a happier looking design. There's an overdrive badge on the boot as well, so yeah, what a great old cruiser that would be. Back to open top cars, and we've got a Zodiac here, 657 BKG is the registration of this one, and I like those natty hubcaps as well. Those are interesting, those are sort of aftermarket hubcaps there, not Ford fitment, so that's quite snazzy. And another example of the open top car, which is a real treat to see, that is. Mark III Zodiac next, from 1965. Carrying on this look at classic Fords, the Consuls, the Zephyrs and the Zodiacs. We're back down to the NEC and the Ford Hall, and a side-on view of a very smartly turned out Ford Consul Mk2, complete with white wall tyres, or are they the clip-on white wall look conversions that you can add to your regular tyres, like we've got on the Pilot. Can't quite see in this photo, they might be, but they give the right look. Okay, we're back to Tatton Park on a beautifully sunny day. An interesting lineup of Mark IIIs here. In the foreground, the Zephyr 4 with a narrow grille, and next to that, Zodiacs with a much larger grille and the twin headlights either side. So a very much more upmarket version of the Zephyr that you can see in the foreground, but ironically the car in the foreground is probably rarer, and rare indeed is this original 1953 Monte Carlo Rally Ford Zephyr. VHK 194. This one won, apparently, the Monte Carlo in 1953, so that's a very historic old Ford, that is. What a treat to see that one. We're back down at Malvern in the late 2000s, XYE 813. This one still shows as being on the road, which is great news. It was first put on the road in October of 1959, and again has the sun visor alongside the car, also equipped with a visor. And like I say, was this a common fitment here in the UK back in the day? Let me know in the comments. Okay, back to Tatton Park, and three more lovely Mark III Ford Zodiacs. Another open top Consul here. This is a really smart looking car indeed. Do you know any more of the history of this car, or indeed any of the cars that feature in this video? Please pop a note into the comments. And if you like this kind of thing, please think about liking and subscribing to the Old Classic Car channel. Give it a thumbs up if you like this kind of thing. Now we've got 822 BLX, a Zephyr Zodiac Mark II convertible. These were done by Car Bodies, the body conversions on these. But sadly this registration now is on the mid-1970s Chevrolet of all things. So what's happened? Is this car still around, or has it been re-registered? It's a shame that it's been separated from its original registration, but on its original plate here we have a Mark III Zodiac Estate 100 CBT, and we'll see another snapshot of this dark green car a little bit later on. This was at Malvern many years ago. Now this is nice, isn't it? A Ford Zephyr 6 Mark 1 in a lovely pale blue, again with the white wall tyres and some mighty Lucas lamps on the front, but what a Bobby Dazzler that is. A convertible version, again converted by Car Bodies apparently. The people perhaps best remembered for the old FX4 taxis. And we are back down at Bicester, and there's that Raymond Mays converted Zodiac in the background next to the Cortina in the foreground. Two more examples of the Zephyr Mark II. Again, 6-cylinder cars, but I don't think these had the Raymond Mays conversions, these two cars here. Just a general gathering here of Mark IIs. Again, this was at Tatton Park, probably 2005 or 2006, sometime around about then. Now we are down at the National Motor Museum at Bewley. If you've not seen that video yet, please check that one out when you're finished here. There is a full walk around video, and it also features this car, PLE 999, a 1954 Mark I Consul convertible, no less. Now that is a rare car. What a great lineup we've got here at Malvern in the mid to late 2000s. What a fantastic gathering here. We've got a Zephyr 6 in the foreground, a Zodiac alongside that, and another Zephyr 6 at the end there. But what a great lineup of cars. Hopefully they're all still on the road. Which of those cars would you bring home? I do like the blue one, I must admit. Okay, UOO170. We've got a Mark II Ford Zephyr Zodiac here, the 6-cylinder car, showing off its immaculate engine bay. So that's a very handsome car and a different take on the screen visor. This one's got a small tinted perspex sun visor on it, which makes a change from the metal ones that you usually see. And another Mark II Zodiac here, again in convertible form, so again a car bodies conversion. Now, if you saw the video that we put out a little while ago, touring around Devon and Somerset looking for interesting cars, you might well remember this particular Zephyr 6 Mark III being featured. A bit of a work in progress, clearly, for someone back in the day. It's a 1965 car, but progress on it appears to have stalled, and now it's on display outside Antiques and Collectibles Emporium. So quite what the future holds for this Zephyr 6 isn't quite clear, but it didn't look too bad. So clearly someone has done some work on it, so hopefully one day it'll be picked back up again and put back on the road. But yeah, interesting to see it there. And we're back to the mighty Mark IV now. This is CNP144H, the mighty Ford Zodiac. There's another rear view of the same car. The Mark IV Zodiacs were built from 1966 through to 1972. They're very, very different looking cars to the cars that came before, especially the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs, and not everyone was entirely sold on this very boxy styling. The proportions were quite odd as well. Bit of fun here for YWK329, a rally prepared Mark II Zephyr or Zodiac, and this was at the Rednall Karting Centre on a historic rally stage just a few years ago. We've got an XK150 on the right hand side in the background and a Volvo PV544, so a real variety of cars taking part. Now, thanks to Peter for this snapshot. This is 803 MKP. It hasn't been taxed since 2016, but hopefully it's still around, this Zodiac convertible, and the chap in there had owned it from new. This photo was taken in the late 1980s. So what's the story with this one? Is it still around? Is it going to be restored perhaps? Now, looking very, very restored and immaculate down at the NEC is this Mark I Ford Zephyr 6 on some very snazzy looking wheels, and particularly big at the back, so clearly a few engine mods presumably and engine modifications, etc. Really nice looking car. Now, this was at a garden centre, a bit of a classic car gathering at a garden centre many years ago. Somewhat modified Mark II Consul, but I don't remember seeing this one anywhere anytime recently, so if you can fill me in on where this car is now, please pop a note into the comments. It'd be nice to know where it is now. And we've seen one photo of this one before, and here it is again, NEV 482C. This was in the queue of cars driving in to the Malvern Classic Car Show, I think in 2023, with a very similar Zephyr in front of it, and yeah, just sat in the queue. Another lovely Zephyr 4 here, again the 4-cylinder car, and yeah, you can really see the concave shape of those front grills, which is really neat feature on these particular cars. Another beautiful estate now, the Mark II Zephyr based estate, very nice indeed. This was at the NEC, again in the Ford Hall. You can see quite a few other Fords in the background there. Another beautiful example of the estate here as well. Now that's very nice, very light green and white car, very, very nice. Apparently this one has had a few modifications. It's got a Mk3 engine and triple SUs, and some aquaplane gear under the bonnet as well. And in the next photo we'll get a proper look under the bonnet of this magnificent car. Just look at that, how fantastic is that? A beautiful polished aquaplane special inlet manifold there with the triple SU carbs and the trumpets. Just a stunning looking engine bay, so hats off to whoever restored that particular car, because it looked fantastic when it was down at the NEC just a year or two back. Look at this, a lovely two-tone Zephyr 6 Mk1 car on a re-registered, I think DSJ is usually a sign of a car that's not necessarily on its original registration number, but a beautiful turned out car. Again, it's got the portholes added to the front wings and a steel sun visor and a radio aerial no less. Now we're looking at XUV 206. This is a Zephyr Mk2, first put on the road in September of '59, and still with the standard, I think about 2.5 litre or 2.6 litre 6-cylinder engine. And here again is 100 CBT. We saw a photograph of this one at Malvern many years ago, and this was more recently, I think, at Cholmondeley Castle, probably, looking at the undulating ground there. If you know any more of this particular car, let me know in the comments. There's quite a variety of classic cars in this particular show. There's always a good turnout at Cholmondeley. Okay, we are back in the classic car auction area at the NEC, the mighty NEC car show. The TSY 303 is the car in the foreground. That's a 61 Zephyr. It's a low-line car, and it sold, I think, in 2023 for just over £5,000, I think it was. So yeah, good buy for someone there. And we're going a bit newer here, XXD124H, the Mk4 Zodiac, the Farnham Estate converted car, this one from 1969. Another beautiful Consul convertible here. Of course, the Consul name would also be used on the Consul Classic and the early Granadas. But in this case, we're just looking at the cars from the 50s and the 60s, the Consuls, the Zephyrs and the Zodiacs. There's another view of the same car peering in over the shoulder of where the driver would be sat. Yeah, perfect for a sunny day like it was there. Very, very smart indeed. I like the way you can just roll back the first part of the roof as well. VSL 210, another car on a reissued number plate. This is a Mk1 Ford Consul, again with sun visor and a natty little mirror just attached to the top of the pillar there. But very, very nice indeed. And alongside, classic old Austin also of the 1950s, and you can just see a Mk2 Zephyr in the corner. Okay, rear three-quarter view now of the Ford Zodiac Mk3 estate. What a mighty luggage hauler that would be. Wouldn't that be perfect for going on holiday or to go and pick your shopping up in even? Great, great car. This one from 1964. 861YUJ is next, another example of the Australian bodied ute or coupe utility based on a 6-cylinder Ford Zephyr. This was an Australia only car, I believe, and this one would have been brought here at some point in more recent times because it was never sold in the UK with this particular style of body. We're going back to the Mk1 now. Mk1 Zephyr 6 I believe we're looking at, possibly with a non-factory paint job, but yeah, it looks very, very smart indeed. And how shiny does it look under that bonnet as well. So yeah, a really nicely turned out car there. Okay, we are at Malvern for the classic car show down there. We've got a Mk3 Zodiac in the foreground, and next to it the Mk3 Zephyr 4 that we saw a little bit earlier. I think that's the same car, even though it's got a temporary plate stuck over the registration. I'm fairly sure that is the car that begins with NEV as its registration number. Another lovely Mk2 Zodiac in a very fetching two-tone shade of yellow and white, again with sun visor. I wonder if someone's actually remaking those sun visors now, because they do seem very popular. Back to Mk4s with LJG228E. That dates it to early 1967, and this is really the poshest of all the Mk4. This is the Executive, which was a cut above even the Zodiac apparently. So yes, that's a really posh car. Another Mark II Consul here, complete with luggage rack. Usually you see those on sports cars, but here we've got one on the back of a saloon just for a bit of added carrying capacity. It's also got quite an interesting exhaust trim on it as well. Who remembers buying those back in the day? Another lovely car here, badged up as the Consul 375. This is a fairly early example of the Mark II Ford Consul, I believe. Again, it's got a radio aerial, which tells us it's got tunes for a period wireless set somewhere in there. The Mark III here, and showing off its mighty load bay. This is a 1964 car, complete with a lovely little GB plate on the back as well. But how much stuff could you get in the back of that? It looks like it's got a fairly high boot floor, so I'm assuming that lifts up and you can put stuff underneath as well. Now we're over at Alton Park, and two photos now of YGT 959. This is a lovely Abbott converted Ford Zephyr Mk2. Beautiful estate, and I love the two-tone paint jobs that these cars all came in. Really, really smart looking car, and I do like the metal roof bars as well on the roof. What a handsome looking car that is. I could definitely find a home for one of those here at OCCHQ. I think that would just be a fantastic car to bomb around in and pick things up in and attend auto jumbles with. It could be dangerous though with all that carrying capacity, so maybe it's better that we don't get one of those. Okay, back to the earlier cars. The Ford Consul Mk1 on a reissued registration, KAS 730. It looks like a very original car. That wing mirror looks a little bit later, probably from the 1970s, but everything else looks pretty much as it rolled out of Ford's factory at Dagenham in the early 1950s. Got an early-ish Mark II Zodiac here, 722 ENK, surrounded by many classic cars. There's a Volvo Amazon, probably a 122S alongside it, and also a Bentley of similar vintage. This, I think, was down at Ragley Hall, of which there is a separate video also here on the Old Classic Car channel. Now we have a 1966 registered Ford Zodiac Mk3. Again, top of the tree really for the Mark III range. Extra lights on the front, mighty shiny, very shiny alloy wheels on this particular car, so it's obviously had a few mods at some point. And just a close-in view of a car I spotted many, many years ago. The registration of this is OHV 800, Mark II Zodiac, of course. This one shows up on being on SORN, i.e. statutory off-road notification, that means here in the UK, telling us that the car is not currently taxed for the road, but it is still around, hopefully. This one dates to 1959. And a 64 Ford Zephyr 6 Mark III estate here, and usually with a vinyl roof. I wonder if that was fitted maybe in the 1970s. Vinyl roofs were all the rage in the 70s, so I'm wondering if that's when that was fitted. I'm fairly sure it wouldn't have been fitted when it was new, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if I am. Another Mark IV here, VDA 141H, a mighty Ford Zephyr. This is the V6 Deluxe, in fact. And yeah, huge long bonnet, very, very square lines on these particular cars. I can't say I've ever really liked these. The Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs I get, and the Mark Is are really nice, but the Mark IVs aren't really for me. And here we got a 1964 Zodiac here. Thanks again to Tony for taking this photo and sending it over a little while ago. This was at the Paint and Classic Car Show, I think in 2023. Now here's a real beauty in two-tone grey. This is one of my favourite cars in the whole collection here, actually. XPB 869, the Zephyr Zodiac, dating to May of 1955. That is a very smart looking car indeed. And we are back to Tatton Park, or is this Chumley? Yeah, this is Chumley Castle, I tell a lie. 145 WKP, another Mark III Ford Zodiac there, complete with RAC members badge on the grille. This one still shows as being taxed, which is great news, and it was first used in April of 1963. Over to Tatton Park, also in Cheshire, we've got a Zephyr here, 273 PTO is a registration. I think that's the second car we've seen in this collection with a PTO registration. And this one is also still taxed and in use, and it dates to 1962. And look at those groovy seat covers in that one. That's quite a lovely looking car, that is. I think we are at Astle Park in 2007, I think this particular photo is taken, so we're going back a bit now. and a lovely pale yellow Consul here in the Mark II, and you can really see the Thunderbird inspired lines at the front there. Very handsome, very rock and roll here kind of car. Thanks to Peter for these photos now. 967 EUC Mark II Consul. This one still shows as being taxed and on the road. It's a 1962 car. Possibly my favourite Consul of all the cars featured in this video is this beauty RDA 471. Beautiful condition, lovely colour. That car dates to 1956. This was at one of the Avro Heritage Classic Car Meets, of which there are several videos now on the Old Classic Car channel. And I had quite a lengthy chat with the guy who owned that CX alongside. Okay, real gaggle of Mark IIIs here. You can see the differences. There's a Zephyr 4 on the left with a smaller grille, and the Zephyr 6 facing it on the right with the slightly larger grille. The Mark II here, this turned up at one of the evening pub meets that we try and get to fairly regularly. 110 LAL is the registration of this particular Ford Zephyr, and that's not been taxed since 2021, so maybe it's off the road for a bit of work at the moment, but it looked to me in beautiful condition just a few years ago, so hopefully we'll see that one out and about soon. Now, I think this was at an auction down at Malvern many years ago, GDP 499, the Zephyr 6. This one hasn't been taxed since 2010, so where's this now? It's a 1953 example of the Mark I Zephyr 6, but surely that one will be out and about again one day. It looks too good just to be sat around somewhere. The Mark II Consul here, UGJ 657. Two photographs of this bright white Consul now. This one's still on the road. It's a 1958 car, and alongside it, a bright red Drive TR6. And there's a rear view of the same car, and you can also see a Mark I Ford Cortina alongside it. Of course, the early Cortinas were badged as Consuls. They were the Consul Cortinas. So the Consul name did appear on quite a few different cars. But yeah, that's the main one in the middle there. That's a beautiful looking car in white. Back over to Chumley, and we've got CAS 669 Mark III Ford Zodiac. This one finished in maroon, quite a narrow rear track. The rear wheels are really tucked in under the bodywork on these particular cars, which is a feature of you'll quite often see that on cars of the 1960s. Think about the E-Type as well. The wheels are very inset on those as well. Now this is down at Gaydon, the British Motor Museum. We've got two photos now of PHY 950, beautiful Ford Consul Mark I estate. Again with those roof bars on the roof like we saw on the Mark II just a few moments ago. But what a cracking looking car that is. Really, really nice looking car. I would love to own one of those. Just so handy. These classic estates, much rarer than the contemporary saloons, and yeah, just a beautiful looking thing to potter around in, that would be. Now here's an interesting one, SLC 329, a Consul convertible no less. Now this one, when I check for that registration SLC 329, it doesn't show up as being registered at all. So quite what's happened there, I don't know. I mean, this was quite a few years ago. I think this was at a New Year's Day meeting I took that photo. And here's a rear photo of the same car at a different meeting, again quite a few years ago. But where is it now? Like I say, it's not showing up as being registered, so maybe it's been separated from its number and it's on retention somewhere possibly, and the car has been re-registered. That's a possibility, but if you know where it is, it'd be interesting to have an update on its current whereabouts. Okay, we're back down to the NEC. We've got GLO 584C, a 1965 Ford Zephyr 4, showing off its 4-cylinder engine. Wonder who bought that. Is it on the road now? What shows has it been to? Does it go to shows even, or maybe it's a regular user now? Who knows? Cracking Zodiac here, and some very interesting looking wheels. Are they Kraigars? I'm just trying to think what make of wheels they are. American wheels, but certainly suit it. Very, very nice indeed. What's the registration? 251 FDM, I think, is the plate on that particular car. So it looks like it's still got its original registration. And to round out, we're back to Tatton Park in the mid-2000s, about 2005 or 2006, and we've got a yellow and white Zodiac Mark II. PFO 630 is the registration, and it's currently off the road. It's a 1959 car. And that particular car concludes this look at the classic Ford Consuls, the Zephyrs and the Zodiacs Mark I to Mark IV. I hope that was of interest. Please let me know in the comments if you like this kind of thing. Like, subscribe, give the video a thumbs up if you do like it, and there'll be many, many more videos along very, very soon. So bye for now.